Don't you agree that Sylvia has always seen what others can't? Yes. Isn't this just perfectly? I mean, the saying is just about as perfect as you could make it.
I feel like Cassandra. She could see the future. Yes. Nobody listened to her.
Well, you're different. People listen to you. I listen. Lots of people listen. I think this audience is probably interested in asking you questions.
Uh-oh.
Aren't you?
I'm good at asking questions.
What would you like to?
Sure.
Well, are you? Okay, start here. What is it? I'll repeat the question. So, what does it really mean, the hope spot?
What it really means is that there are people who have stepped up to be champions, to take a place they love in the ocean and to energize a community around them, to move from where they are to get to a better place, ideally to have fully protected areas, to add to that bank that many organizations and individuals around the world are aspiring to, of 30% of the ocean embraced with real care by 2030. And I say that's a good start. I like Ed Wilson's half Earth, half of the ocean, half of the land, really fully protected, where we let the natural systems prosper. Let our life support system do what it needs to do to hold the planet steady. If you like to breathe, you'll listen up. If you like the chemistry of the planet to be restored to a more stable state than what we have put it into, through what we put into the air, through what we put into the ocean, what we've taken out of the ocean, what we've removed from the land, from the fabric of life, we know that it matters now. When I was a kid, we didn't know. So it's to give power, call it hope if you will, to empower people to realize you can make a difference. It always starts with somebody, a champion, or a kid, or a president, or somebody who says, I get it. This is what we're going to do that will move from this to this. And it started with a dozen places that were sort of arbitrarily identified, and everybody could acknowledge that the Galapagos, well, duh. The Arctic, well, duh. The Antarctic, anybody can see that these are critically important areas that need to be looked at with care and caution. But now we're getting people everywhere, sometimes little places, sometimes like the Florida Gulf Coast, it embraces a big chunk of the ocean. But together, it is about actions that are taken that can enhance protection, but it's also just getting people. I'd say the biggest problem is not what we're putting into or out of, taking out of the ocean, it's ignorance. And if you can get enough people motivated to vote the right way, to personally choose, well, to think of what's in the ocean as more than just seafood, it's sea life. And sure, you can kill a fish, and it has a value, like a dead whale. But if you look at what these creatures do for the ocean, in the ocean, like sharks, more valuable alive than dead, not just tourism, but they poop. And they are part of the eat and be eaten network of life that has shaped the world we live in. And I don't blame those 500 years ago who thought Earth is the center of the universe, but I do blame people today for thinking that and acting as if it's all about us now.
I like the word spot. It connotes location or geography.
I knew you'd like that,
yeah.
Mr.
So you were a geographer.
Geospatial.
You were a geographer spot, and hope is the sort of emotional thing that you emote.
It's a very human
So it's hope is the emotional dimension of it, and spot is the location. So as a landscape architect, we always took map overlays and overlaid them to be able to pick out the right spot.
Yeah.
And, it's quite natural for human beings. Starbucks wants to pick out the right spot to be able to.
And he uses GIS.
Right.
Uses
And
Esri.
They do, but think about it. Targeting location, it's all about
That's right.
selection of the right spot. And hope spots, at this point, maybe the hope is a little too soft, doesn't motivate us enough, but I think I'm very motivated. But sometimes my friends tell me there is no hope. Well, don't you sometimes feel there's no hope? Well,
then
today.
You talk to Sylvia and you change your mind.
And you change your mind. Yeah, I know, exactly right.
I think if you've given up, that's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yes.
And that's why you can talk yourself into despair, or you can talk to a kid and realize, hey, they don't know that it's impossible. Join up with them. And what you think is not possible, suddenly, you see how you can go from here to a better place.
I'm okay with hope.
Okay, good.
But I want more than hope. Hope is not enough.
Action. No.
To be honest.
No,
I get nowhere by hoping.
Greta Thunberg says she's done with hope. She wants action. Well, I'm there too.
Exactly. And really to get action, our friend Richard Saul-Wurman, he always says, understanding precedes action.
Yeah.
So this whole business about measurement and analytics and predictions are all about creating understanding.
Right.
So understanding precedes action, and action can fulfill hope. So we're just playing around with words here, but these are important words because this is an important meeting, wouldn't you say? Some of you just showed up because it was probably in your...
Free coffee.
Free coffee, yeah, exactly right. I always worry about him because he just shows up to take photos. I don't know. On the other hand, this is an important meeting because it is getting late. It's late in the day. It's not dark yet, but it's late in the bloody day. And anybody who has a brain, which we all do, know that. And you particularly as an audience are interesting to me because you didn't just show up. Most of you are all in, aren't you? You know what it takes to be all in? That means play at 100%. So last night, Sylvia talked to a group here in this community, and people ask you this interesting question: what can I do? What can I just do? What could each of us do? And in that little sweet voice was the irony for all of us. What can we do as individuals? And I was so excited because what you said is we're living in an age of knowledge.
That's right.
It is the one weapon that we have that...
Our superpower.
Our superpower is this knowledge. And I would simply say geographic knowledge, which is all knowledge, of course. I'm a little biased, but fundamentally all knowledge can be organized geographically to identify the spots. And being able to bring knowledge together to define the spots for priority is, on the terrestrial side, what Ed Wilson is attempting to do with mapping all the biodiversity and then trying to direct people's attention to buy and put into permanent conservation lands those areas on the land. And I remember in 2002 when you came to my office and we laid out on a board the idea of what we need is in the ocean kind of like map overlay in order to target the areas to define for acquisition purposes or preservation purposes. It was actually long before your even hope spot came about, which is the sort of framing of the methodology to actually act. Because many of you in this room are measurement people, aren't you? You're all about measurement. We saw presentations on it this morning. Other people in the room are all about analytics, to take measurements and model behavior, model natural processes. And then other people in the room are interested in action. That is, taking the measurements and taking the models and the forecasts and playing, doing something spatially. Let's locate it here, or let's preserve this there, or let's take action, whatever it is. This process of measuring, analyzing, and then acting, or deciding and acting, is very similar to the way the central nervous system works. You and I both have a nervous system, I presume, and and we are filled with stimulus or measurements on an ongoing basis, and sometimes we react. And we don't usually just react with one hand, we react in a more holistic way. This is the way we're wired. And we integrate our measurements and our observations with things like emotions and our experiences. So it's not just stimulus response, it's the integration as humans of all of our current sensing together with our historical experience, together with emotions and values and some of the things that you were so clearly defining. So when I look at the world now, I'm saying it resembles a natural organism, the sort of Gaia thing that we talked about years ago. And what it's missing as a natural organism is a central nervous system, where we can bring together all the measurements, all the sensing, whether it's atmospheric measurements or in situ measurements, bring it all together, and then using the network, be able to define stimulus, analytics, understanding, and response. I'm talking abstractly here, but I think that is the context that I want to frame the rest of this meeting, is it's some of you are measurement people, some of you are analytic people, other people are actors. And bringing these things together in a global information system built on the web is exactly the direction that this is going. So we will see emerge almost on our screens this idea of a collaborative way to measure all of our living and physical systems. And they'll be unified with powerful visualization tools, with messaging tools, with analytic tools that wake everyone up, as you said. I think it's about waking up, but it's also about participating. And then the technology stuff, which I think about a lot, and some of my colleagues here think about a lot. We keep working on this idea of building the nervous system.
The bad news, there's 7 billion people on the planet. The good news is we've got 7 billion brains.
Exactly right. So
And if we can...
How do we make available the nervous system to the brains so people are, in other words, oh, I see. And not only I see, but also I collaborate.
Yeah.
Here's what I can do. Because how can you actually mobilize everyone? Okay, we've got the fabric, we've got the internet, it's reaching now most people with cell phones or whatever. So how do we wire that together in terms of actually, so where I'm going with this actually, Sylvia, is I think the technology's here. But the technology isn't going to be enough. In this space, you and your inspiration specifically, but also the broader you in this room, need to step up, I think, and play at 100% to actually make the movement happen. And I'm not trying to...
I'm in. Are you in?
Yeah, well, I think obviously, I mean, you are the thing that gets us in. I mean, you did it to me, you did it to everybody in this room. And I think we do need to go all in. We need to use every bit of your science, every bit of our best measurement tools, every bit of our best technology, and also our best, what I call design thinking. You know, as a landscape architect, you design. This is something we do. like the rocks outside, and put the tree here. Design is really an interesting thing because it's about taking the substance of, in this case, science and observation, and then creating alternative designs. And you lay out these alternative designs and you think about the consequences of the designs. So one design actually is not well thought out, which is the current trajectory of what's going to happen. So, that's alternative A. And alternative B would be here's a list of things that we would do differently. That's design thinking. And here's yet another one. So as a landscape architect, do I put the walk here? Do I put it there? Do I put the trees here? Where do I put them? That's design thinking. And when we talk about a global scale, it's not just one individual designing the future. I mean, there are leaders in the world that think that they can do that. I'll leave them nameless. But collaborative thinking. So if we look at the current trajectory, it's just stimulus response without consciousness. And a nervous system allows us to bring consciousness, like a geoconsciousness, alive. And that geoconsciousness has to be shared, like your little story maps that you're building for the hope spots. This is one way of sharing the knowledge and getting people in.
Right.
So these visualization tools are not just maps, but they're ways to communicate. They're not just words, they're not just photographs, but they're kind of this really very intuitive, you look at a map and you see, and then you understand, and then you begin to act. So in a small way, I think GIS allows us to bring the data together. It also allows us to communicate the data more effectively. But I'll get back to my main plot, which is without the sort of heart and mind to create design alternatives and then get people to buy into it, kind of like Arab Spring. Arab Spring is so interesting to me because it was a movement. Do you remember Arab Spring? It was really an interesting movement. But it was not done just by somebody from headquarters. It was done like spontaneously with a kind of I don't want to call it like a dogma, kind of an understanding among, and then all these individual pockets of behavior they played in small groups.
Once you see, you can't unsee.
Yeah.
It's like now I get it.
That's true, but the seeing is not enough. I mean, I want little groups to get together to start playing hard. I kind of have my little community group here in Redlands, and they're my friends. And we keep trying to do something meaningful, more than what I can just do myself. And I see that with you. You do it at different scales of things, but you do it very personally. Like she got to Laura in order to get to bush number 2, right? Wasn't that your technique?
Yeah, saving the world is a team sport.
A team sport, exactly right. Yeah, you have all these little things. What other questions do you have, actually, of Sylvia? Yes? I'm sorry, I've been rambling on. I'm sorry, I really apologize. I'm supposed to let people ask questions. Yes? We have to move faster with these mics.
All right. Well, I drive a boat in San Francisco Bay, so I work with a lot of commercial mariners. I've also been lucky enough to work with quite a few nerdy scientists, and I love that crowd. But what I've found interesting is that those two groups often seem to speak different languages, even though in a lot of cases I think they've got some common interests. So how, over the course of your career, have you learned to communicate and translate between all these different groups?
What was the bottom line?
Communication. How do you communicate?
Between the Hope Spot champions?
And the nerdy scientists and everyone else.
Well, that's kind of why we're here, because that is obviously vital and desirable. That's the whole point, that you'll share success here that might translate to success or failure. Now what do? I need your help. How do we fix the problem over here? By connecting people who care, who have similar objectives. And it's like a forum then. But if you can have a framework that makes it easy not only to gather data, but then to put it together in terms of solving problems and then sharing the perspective. It's, as I say, it's ignorance that is killing us more than any other action. In ignorance, we're doing these stupid things. If you knew that what you're doing is facilitating this, you might be inspired to do something else. But if you don't know, you can't care. And so I don't have a straight answer to your straight question, except that that is the whole point. Figuring out how do we do just what you were asking. And your help in this is what we need. How do we connect the dots more effectively? Yeah,
Well, yeah, she could have said maps and everything would have been happiness. I use maps. No,
Maps, okay, there you go.
I want to answer something here. I try to see things through another person's eyes.
Yeah, or another creature's eyes.
Yes.
I mean, really, if you think about what it takes to make a tuna, what they go through in the course of the 10 years or so it takes for them to mature, you would just be so full of respect you'd never want to hurt one because they're just so amazing.
Extraordinary.
Anyway, I say do unto fish as you would have fish do unto you.
One last question right here.
Hi, Sylvia. My question is, with your hope spots, 2 questions actually. How do organizations come to you? Do you look for a hot spot and go to them, or do people approach you? And the second one is, after they're set up, a lot of, from my experience as working in the Coral Triangle, was the management strategies fall apart once funding ends and that kind of thing.
Could you repeat for me?
Yeah.
How do you nominate one?
Uh-huh.
And then how are they managed?
Okay. All right. How are they nominated? Laura Cassiani, where are you? Here she is. Okay. Yep. The head of our Hope Spot. Bring the. Look at that man dance. Wow.
Hi, everybody. I'm Shannon. I'm the Hope Spots program manager. I also am Shannon the Shark in my spare time. We do both. Nominators come to us with areas that they feel are valuable. They have to demonstrate why those areas are valuable in our nomination form, which goes to our Hope Spots Council. And we also do seek out areas in the ocean that we feel like are critical, and we have partners who are interested in nominating those areas as Hope Spots. So we do both, and we're open to both.
You too can nominate a Hope Spot, but you have to be willing to commit and say what you're going to do and why it matters. And you can be a champion.
It'll turn on.
All right, here we go. So can anyone in this room just make a map today where every single person is from, and let's pretend that that was a Hope Spot, and can we see what that looks like? Can anyone in here do that? I bet you guys can.
Sure.
I do that every year. Oh. And we have new federal privacy data laws that hinder that process, but I'll make that map for you today.
That's called a hot spot.
Yeah, it's a
It's called a
hot
hot
map.
spot in GIS lingo, but you're right.
We can all be Hope Spots in our hearts, everywhere we are from and wherever we've been and wherever we want to go. Then we're really looking at an interesting map.
And we all need to pull together for the high seas because, except for people on boats that move around, humans are not out there in the open ocean. A few exceptions, such as the Azores. It's a little mountain that sticks up in the middle of the high seas, but it's beyond that unfortunately, when we have these conferences where the stakeholders are given a chance to speak, the fish are often on the table, but they're not at the table. And so we need to be a voice, not just for fish, but for the ocean, and for all those others, like those 50 years from now who aren't yet born, who can't be at the table, that we need to think like that. But we take so much for granted that somebody thought about years before, ages before, and we're the beneficiaries. I think it's a pretty big and wonderful concept that we're a part of this continuum, and that we are at a special point in time that has, I mean, you could say that at any point in time, but now in particular, because we're so close, either making it or breaking it with respect to planetary functions that we influence. And we can either use our superpower now to go in a restorative way, a positive way, and work within the systems that keep us alive, or just either in ignorance or in contrariness, go the other way. But this is the moment, and we all should feel the privilege of the superpower of being early in the 21st century, because this is a moment that could never be before and won't ever happen again.
This is such an interesting question, isn't it? Where? Because it could be through your own love of a place. There's some places in the world I just love, and
It's
I would
called
like to,
Earth.
and I would like to make sure those are taken care of.
Right.
But also there's the science side, which says at the end of the, the end of the estuaries, the ecologically most important places. Mm-hmm. So these are two different views. In one case, you're gathering people to put their heart on the line and go after a place. And in the other cases, you're using all the web of life understanding and models and analytics to pick the most important places that the hope spot should go into. Do you think this way? Because
whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes to get as much as you
But
can.
it should be, evidence.
Yeah.
Evidence. We have the evidence, but we need even more. But we need to take what we now know and, like science on a sphere, you need to be able to communicate it in a way that even a congressman can understand. Or woman.